The stagecoach rattled and groaned as it rolled down the long dirt road, its wheels kicking up red dust that clung to Clara's skirts and settled in her hair. The horses snorted and strained, their harnesses jingling with a rhythm that seemed to echo her racing heart. She sat on the worn leather seat, clutching her carpetbag so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Every turn of the wheel brought her closer to the Carson ranch, and to the man who thought he was getting a different bride. The sun hung low in the sky, hot and merciless, and the air shimmered like glass. When the driver finally pulled the reins and shouted, "End of the line, miss." Carson Ranch, Clara felt her breath catch. The coach came to a lurching stop, and for a long moment she couldn't move. She peered out the window and saw him, Luke Carson, standing near the corral fence, a tall man with broad shoulders, a weathered face, and a calmness about him that both steadied and frightened her. His hat cast a shadow over his eyes, and he leaned against the fence like someone who'd known too many long days and too few soft moments. Clara swallowed hard, her throat dry. This was supposed to be a fresh start, but all she could think about was how wrong it all was. The Denver shelter had promised her a chance, a home, a man of kindness and good standing who'd asked for a wife through the church. But they hadn't meant her. She was the stand-in, the plain girl with a scar on her wrist and fear in her eyes. The driver cleared his throat. "You comin', miss?" She nodded, gathered her courage, and stepped down. The earth beneath her boots felt unfamiliar, loose, like the world might give way at any second. The wind tugged at her bonnet ribbons, sweeping her hair across her cheek. Luke looked up as she approached, and his gaze was steady, unreadable. He didn't smile, not right away. Just watched her, quiet and patient. "Mr. Carson," she managed, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Yes, ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. "That'd be me. You must be Miss Clara, from Denver." Her heart thudded painfully. This was it, the moment she had to tell him the truth. She drew a shaky breath, eyes fixed on the ground. "There's been a mistake," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I'm not the pretty one you ordered." Luke blinked, confusion flickering in his eyes. She kept talking, her voice trembling. "The shelter, they must have mixed things up. There was another girl, Lydia. She was the one meant for you. She's beautiful, blonde hair, blue eyes, sweet as summer peaches. Everyone loved her, but she ran off before they could send her, and," Clara's throat tightened. "They sent me instead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to deceive you." A long silence followed. The wind whistled through the corral, carrying the scent of hay and horses. Somewhere in the distance, a cow lowed. Luke took a step closer, studying her face as though weighing every word. Clara braced for disappointment, or anger, or worse, pity. But what came next she never expected. He smiled. Not a big, flashy smile, but a small, honest one that reached his eyes. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "you're all I needed." She looked up, startled. "What?" He shrugged, still smiling. "Didn't order pretty. Ordered a woman who'd help build a home. A woman who'd stand by her word. Far as I can see, you already done that just by getting off that stagecoach." Clara felt her breath catch in her chest. She stared at him, unsure if he was mocking her, but there was no laughter in his eyes, only calm sincerity. He reached for her carpetbag. "You've had a long ride. Let's get you settled. Supper's near ready, and my little girl's been askin' when you'd arrive." "Your little girl," she echoed, still dazed. He nodded, starting toward the farmhouse. 6 years old. Name's Rosie. Lost her ma last spring. She's been prayin' for someone to brush her hair again." That stopped Clara in her tracks. Something warm and fragile stirred inside her chest. Once, she had brushed her own sister's hair the same way, before the fever took her and left Clara alone in the world. She followed him to the house. It wasn't grand, but it was sturdy and well-loved, white paint weathered by sun, a porch swing that creaked gently in the wind, and a garden out front that hinted at care and patience. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and stew, the faint scent of fresh bread hanging like a promise. Luke set her bag by the door and called softly, "Rosie, sweetheart. Someone's here to meet you." A small face peeked from behind the kitchen doorway. Big hazel eyes blinked shyly, framed by a halo of tangled curls. The girl hesitated for a heartbeat before darting forward and hiding behind her father's leg. Luke crouched beside her. "Rosie, this here's Miss Clara. She's gonna be stayin' with us a while." The girl peeked out again. "Is she the lady from the letter?" Clara knelt down, her heart twisting. I'm not sure I'm that lady, sweetheart, she said softly. But I'd like to be your friend, if you'll let me. Rosie studied her face for a long, serious moment. Then, with the suddenness only a child could muster, she smiled, a wide, gap-toothed grin, and flung her little arms around Clara's neck. You look kind, she whispered. Clara froze, tears stinging her eyes. And you, she said, her voice shaking, look brave. Rosie giggled and pulled back just enough to look at her father. Pa, I like her. Luke chuckled, his voice low and warm. Told you she would. He straightened and glanced at Clara, his expression thoughtful. Come on, let's eat before Rosie starts nibbling the table again. Clara followed them to the small wooden table by the window. The stew was simple, but rich, and the bread still warm. They bowed their heads as Luke said grace, his deep voice steady and sure. Clara mouthed the words, though her heart trembled. She hadn't prayed in a long time, not since she stopped believing anyone listened. But tonight, as she sat across from the man who hadn't sent her away and beside the little girl who'd hugged her without hesitation, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Maybe it wasn't luck that brought her here. Maybe it was grace. As the night deepened and the stars came out one by one, Clara helped Rosie into bed, brushed her wild curls, and sang a lullaby so softly even she could barely hear it. Luke stood in the doorway, silent, watching the two of them. When Clara turned to him, uncertain, he gave her that same small smile again, the kind that said he meant every word. You're all I needed, he repeated quietly. And for the first time in a long, long while, Clara believed him. The morning sun spilled across the wide Texas plains, painting the Carson ranch in shades of gold. Clara stood by the porch rail, a cup of coffee warming her hands as the wind teased strands of hair from her braid. The sky stretched endlessly above her, clean and blue, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel like running. She belonged here, somehow. It had been nearly a month since the day she stepped off that stagecoach, trembling and apologizing for not being the pretty one he'd ordered. Since then, Luke Carson had never once treated her like a replacement. He didn't look at her with disappointment or expectation, only quiet respect. And Rosie, dear, sweet Rosie, had wrapped her small arms around Clara's heart so tightly that she couldn't imagine life without her now. Each day began with the rhythm of the ranch, the crowing of roosters, the smell of hay, the sound of hooves and the hum of chores. Clara found peace in the routine, collecting eggs, hanging laundry, kneading bread while sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. Her hands, once delicate from years in the city, had grown strong, her palms rough but sure. There was something healing in the work, in watching things grow and thrive. Luke worked harder than any man she'd known. From dawn till the last light faded, he was out in the fields, mending fences, tending cattle, or breaking in the new horses. He hardly ever complained, and when he did speak, his words carried weight. She learned quickly that beneath his quiet was a tenderness few people saw. He was patient with Rosie, gentle even when she misbehaved, and he always made sure Clara never lifted more than she could handle. One afternoon, Clara was on her knees by the flower bed, planting seeds Rosie had gathered in her little hands. The air was sweet with the smell of turned soil, and she could hear Luke chopping wood near the barn. Rosie knelt beside her, chattering happily about the doll she wanted to make. Do you think these'll grow? The child asked, her face scrunched in concentration. They will, Clara said softly, patting the earth. Everything grows when it's given love. Rosie smiled and placed her small palm over Clara's. You're like sunshine, Miss Clara. The words made Clara pause, her throat tightening. Sunshine. It had been so long since anyone called her something kind. She smiled through the ache in her chest. You're the real sunshine, Rosie. I just follow your light. A deep voice spoke from behind them. Could be there's enough sunshine for both of you. They turned to see Luke standing a few paces away, axe in hand, his shirt damp with sweat and the faintest smile on his lips. Rosie giggled and ran to him, and he lifted her effortlessly into his arms. His gaze met Clara's over the little girl's curls, and for a fleeting second, she felt something flutter inside her, something she didn't dare name. That evening, as dusk settled over the land, Luke brought out his guitar. He sat on the porch, the fireflies flickering like sparks around him, and began to strum a slow, tender tune. Clara listened from the steps, Rosie curled against her shoulder, half asleep. The melody was simple, but there was a kind of yearning in it that reached deep into Clara's chest. When the last note faded, Luke looked over. "Didn't know if you liked music," he said. "I love it," she whispered. "It sounds like home." He nodded, his gaze holding hers for a long moment. "Good. That's what I was hoppin' to make." The days rolled into weeks. They laughed more often, spoke more easily. Luke taught her to ride, patient even when she clung to the saddle like a frightened child. Rosie started calling her Mama one night without warning, and though Clara corrected her softly, the word lingered like a promise. Then came the storm. It rolled in one afternoon without warning, the sky darkening to a bruised gray. Thunder rumbled low and far, the wind whipping through the open fields. Luke hurried to secure the animals while Clara gathered Rosie inside, latching windows and lighting a lamp. Rain lashed the house, fierce and wild, and the roof groaned under the weight of it. "Is Pa gonna be okay?" Rosie asked, her voice small. Clara crouched beside her. "He'll be fine, sweetheart. Your Pa's stronger than any storm." But when the door flew open and Luke stepped in, soaked to the bone, Clara couldn't hide the rush of relief that swept through her. She helped him hang his coat and handed him a towel, her fingers brushing his. The touch was brief, but enough to send a spark up her arm. "Thank you," he murmured, eyes soft. "You should sit," she said. "You're freezing." He did as she asked, and she brought him a steaming mug of coffee. For a while, they listened to the rain pounding the roof. Rosie had fallen asleep in her blanket on the rug, her tiny hand clutching her doll. "You've done a lot for this place," Luke said quietly, his voice rough but warm. "And for us." Clara shook her head. "I only did what needed doing." He studied her, his gaze steady. "No, you did more. You brought life back into this house." Rosie laughs again. I smile again. "And he hesitated, then looked away. "I sleep easier knowing you're here." Her chest tightened. "You don't have to say that, Luke." "I ain't sayin' it 'cause I have to." His voice dropped lower. "I'm sayin' it 'cause it's true." Clara looked down at her hands, trembling slightly in her lap. "You know," she said, forcing a small laugh, "I never thought anyone would say something like that to me. Then I'll just have to say it again." The lamp flickered as the wind howled outside. For a moment, the whole world felt suspended, just the two of them, the rain, and the soft crackle of the fire. When the storm passed, the air smelled of wet earth and pine. Luke rose and offered his hand. "Come on," he said gently. "Rosie always dances in the rain after a storm. Think you ought to try it too." Clara hesitated, then smiled. "I don't know how." He grinned faintly. "Good thing I do." He led her outside, into the soft drizzle. The ground was slick, the air cool and fresh. He twirled her once, clumsy but sure, and she laughed, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in years. Rosie stirred at the doorway, blinking sleepily and giggling at the sight. Luke's hands were strong and warm as he steadied her. When she looked up, his hat was dripping, his hair plastered to his forehead, but his eyes, those steady blue eyes, shone brighter than the lightning that had passed. "Clara," he said softly, "I didn't order you. I reckon God sent you." Her breath caught, the world blurring around her. For once, she didn't argue. Didn't apologize. She just let the tears fall freely, mixing with the rain on her cheeks. Rosie clapped from the porch, shouting through laughter, "Papa, she's really our mama now." Luke chuckled, brushing wet hair from Clara's face. "Reckon she always was," he murmured. In that moment, standing barefoot in the wet Texas soil, her heart finally stopped running. The storm was over, inside and out. She wasn't the pretty one. She was the right one. And that was all she, or they, would ever need.